Ladies and gentlemen, before we start, tell me where you're listening from in the comments. Maybe you just turned 50 and you're feeling like your best years are behind you. Maybe you're 55 and wondering if it's too late to make a real impact. Maybe you're 45 and starting to feel time pressure for the first time in your life. This conversation is going to change how you think about aging, time, and what's actually possible in the second half of your life. I'm 53 years old, and I'm going to tell you something that might surprise you. I'm more productive, more focused, and more effective now than I was at 30. The last 3 years have been the most impactful of my entire career. Not despite my age, but because of it. Most people think life gets less meaningful after 50. They think your best ideas are behind you. Your energy is declining. Your opportunities are shrinking. They think 50 is when you start coasting toward retirement, when you play it safe, when you accept that your big dreams were just fantasies. They're completely wrong. Today, I'm going to tell you why every day matters more after 50, not less. Why this might be the most important decade of your life. Why the combination of experience, urgency, and clarity that comes with age is the most powerful force for achievement you've ever had access to. By the end of this conversation, you're going to understand why 50 isn't the beginning of decline. It's the beginning of your most focused, most intentional, most impactful years. You're going to learn how to use time pressure as fuel instead of fuel, and you're going to walk away knowing that your best work might still be ahead of you. Let me start with some numbers that will either terrify you or liberate you. If you're 50, you have approximately 7,300 days left. If you're 55, about 58. That sounds scary until you realize something. You finally know what matters. At 30, I had theoretically 15,000 days left, but I wasted thousands of them on things that didn't advance my goals. I spent years figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. I made career mistakes that cost me time and energy. I pursued relationships that weren't right. I invested in opportunities that led nowhere. At 53, I don't have that luxury, but I also don't need it. Every decision I make now is informed by 50+ years of experience. I know what works and what doesn't. I know which people to trust and which to avoid. I know which opportunities are real and which are distractions. I know what energizes me and what drains me. The result? I waste almost no time on things that don't matter. When Tesla was struggling in 2018, I didn't spend months agonizing over the decision to sleep on the factory floor. I knew what needed to be done, and I did it. When SpaceX needed to achieve human spaceflight, I didn't hesitate to bet everything on the approach I believed would work. Experience isn't just knowledge. It's the ability to act decisively when you recognize patterns you've seen before. At 30, you have more time, but less clarity. At 50+, you have less time but exponentially more clarity. For most important decisions, clarity beats time. Here's what I've realized. The scarcity of remaining time doesn't make each day less valuable. It makes each day irreplaceable. When you truly understand that you don't have unlimited days left, you stop wasting them on activities that don't advance your most important goals. You stop saying yes to meetings that don't matter. You stop spending energy on people who drain you. You stop pursuing opportunities that don't align with your mission. This isn't about becoming ruthless. It's about becoming focused. It's about finally having the wisdom to distinguish between what feels urgent and what actually matters. The liberation of diminished options. Here's something counterintuitive. Having fewer options is liberating, not limiting. At 25, the world feels infinite. You could become anything, go anywhere, do anything. That sounds exciting, but it's actually paralyzing. When everything is possible, it's hard to choose anything specific. You end up sampling options instead of committing to excellence. At 53, most of my paths are already chosen. I'm not going to become a professional athlete. I'm not going to start from zero in a completely different industry. I'm not going to reinvent my entire identity. This constraint is freedom. Instead of wondering what I should do with my life, I can focus on how to do what I'm already doing better. Instead of exploring every possibility, I can pursue mastery in the areas where I have the most leverage. Instead of being paralyzed by infinite choices, I can execute on the finite options that actually matter. When I started Tesla, I could have spent years researching every aspect of the automotive industry, studying every possible approach to electric vehicles, analyzing every potential market. Instead, I leveraged what I already knew about batteries, manufacturing, and consumer behavior to make rapid decisions and start building immediately. The same with basics. I didn't need to explore every possible approach to rocket design. I could apply first principles thinking to the specific problem of reducing launch costs based on my existing understanding of physics, engineering, and business economics. Experience gives you the confidence to make big decisions quickly. You've seen enough outcomes to trust your judgment. You've made enough mistakes to recognize the patterns that lead to failure. You've had enough success to know what excellence actually requires. This acceleration of decision-making is one of the hidden advantages of age. While younger people are still gathering information and weighing options, you can move directly to execution. The urgency advantage. Most people think urgency creates stress, but urgency, when properly channeled, creates focus. At 30, I thought I had all the time in the world to achieve my goal. This led to procrastination, perfectionism, and a lot of time spent on activities that felt productive, but didn't actually advance my mission. At 53, I know I don't have all the time in the world. This creates a different kind of energy, the energy of someone who knows that every day counts. This urgency manifests in several ways. Faster decision. I don't have time to analyze every decision to death. I gather the minimum viable information needed to make a good choice, then move forward. Perfect decisions made too late are worthless. Lower tolerance for wait. I immediately eliminate activities, relationships, and commitments that don't advance my core mission. Time is too precious to spend on things that don't matter. Higher standards for opportunities. I don't chase every interesting possibility. I only pursue opportunities that have the potential for massive impact, because those are the only ones worth the remaining time. I have more direct communication. I don't have time for elaborate diplomacy or office politics. I say what needs to be said as clearly and kindly as possible, then move on to solving problems. Greater willingness to take risks. The biggest risk at 53 isn't failure, it's regret. I'd rather fail pursuing something meaningful than succeed at something trivial. This urgency isn't anxiety, it's clarity. It's the difference between feeling pressured and feeling motivated. It's the difference between rushing and moving with purpose. When you truly understand that your time is finite, you stop wasting it on anything that doesn't contribute to your most important goal. The compound effect of experience. Every year after 50, your experience compounds in ways that create exponential advantages. At 25, everything is new. Every challenge feels unprecedented. Every problem requires starting from first principle. This creates a steep learning curve, but also a lot of wasted motion. At 53, I've seen most patterns before. When Tesla faces a production challenge, I don't need to research how manufacturing problems get solved. I've solved them before. When SpaceX encounters a technical setback, I don't panic. I've navigated setbacks before, and know they're part of the process. This pattern recognition creates massive efficiency gains. Faster problem identification. I can spot issues early, because I've seen the warning signs before. Problems that might blindside a younger leader are visible to me months in advance. More effective solution implementation. I know which solutions actually work in practice, not just in theory. I can skip approaches that sound good, but fail in execution. Better people evaluation. After decades of hiring, firing, and working with thousands of people, I can assess talent, character, and fit much more quickly and accurately. Deeper strategic thinking. I can see how current decisions will play out over years or decades, because I've watched similar decisions unfold over time. More effective communication. I know how to explain complex ideas simply, how to motivate different types of people, and how to build consensus around difficult decisions. But here's the most important compound effect. Confidence. At 30, I second-guessed myself constantly. Was I making the right choice? Did I have enough information? What would more experienced people do differently? At 53, I trust my judgment, not because I'm always right, but because I've been wrong enough times to understand the difference between recoverable mistakes and irreversible disaster. I can make bold decisions because I know that most decisions are reversible, and the few that aren't are usually obvious. This confidence isn't arrogance, it's competence. It's the natural result of decades of learning, failing, succeeding, and learning some more. The focus that comes with finite time. The most profound change that comes after 50 is the clarity about what actually matters. In your 20s and 30s, you think everything matters. Every opportunity might be the one that changes your life. Every relationship might be significant. Every decision feels momentous. This is exhausting and inefficient. By 50, you've had enough experiences to understand what creates lasting value and what's just noise. You've seen which investments of time pay off over decades,
and which ones are forgotten within months. For me, this clarity manifests in several ways. Mission focus. I know that advancing sustainable transport and making life multiplanetary are the two things I want to be remembered for. Everything else is either aligned with these missions or eliminated from my schedule. Relationship prioritization. I know which relationships energize me and which ones drain me. I invest deeply in the former and politely minimize the latter. Learning selectivity. I focus on acquiring knowledge that compounds over time and applies to multiple domains rather than learning things that are interesting but not useful. Energy management. I know my peak performance hours and protect them ruthlessly. I know which activities restore my energy and which ones deplete it. Risk assessment. I can distinguish between good risks, high potential upside, manageable downside, alignment with mission, and bad risks, low upside, high downside, a distraction from core goals. This focus isn't about becoming narrow or inflexible. It's about becoming intentional. It's about making conscious choices about how to spend your limited time and energy instead of reacting to whatever seems most urgent. The freedom from others' expectations. One of the unexpected benefits of age is the diminishing importance of other people's opinions. At 30, I care deeply about what people thought of my decisions. Would they respect my career choices? Would they understand my life priorities? Would they approve of my relationship? This concern about others' opinions created enormous inefficiency. I would spend time explaining decisions that didn't need explanation. I would moderate my choices to avoid criticism. I would pursue opportunities that looked impressive to others, rather than opportunities that advanced my actual goals. At 53, I've learned something liberating. Most people's opinions about your life choices are irrelevant. The people whose opinions actually matter, your closest family, your trusted advisors, your key collaborators, they understand your goals and support your mission. They don't need constant explanation or justification. Everyone else, their approval or disapproval doesn't change the outcome of your decision. Their understanding or confusion doesn't affect whether your choices are right for you. This realization creates enormous freedom. Freedom to pursue unconventional paths. I can focus on making life multiplanetary, even if most people think it's unnecessary or impossible. Freedom to make unpopular decisions. I can prioritize long-term sustainability over short-term profits, even if investors complain. Freedom to be authentic. I can express my real thoughts and opinions, instead of saying what I think people want to hear. Freedom to set boundaries. I can say no to requests that don't align with my priorities, even if it disappoints people. Freedom to move quickly. I can make decisions based on my own analysis, rather than building consensus with people who don't have the same information or goal. This isn't about becoming antisocial or arrogant. It's about recognizing that your time is too valuable to spend on managing other people's expectations about choices that only affect your life. The advantage of having less to prove. At 25, I felt like I had everything to prove. I needed to demonstrate that I was smart, capable, successful, worthy of respect. This created a lot of wasted motion, pursuing opportunities because they would impress people rather than because they advanced my goals. At 53, I have less to prove and more to protect. I've already demonstrated that I can build successful companies. I've already shown that I can execute on ambitious visions. I've already proven that I can recover from failures and setbacks. This doesn't mean I'm complacent. It means I'm selective. I don't need to take on projects just to prove I can handle them. I can focus on projects that actually matter to me, that advance my mission, that utilize my unique capabilities. This shift from proving to contributing is one of the most powerful changes that comes with age and experience. When you're trying to prove yourself, you're reactive. You take on challenges based on what they say about you rather than what they accomplish for the world. When you're focused on contributing, you're proactive. You choose challenges based on their potential impact, their alignment with your mission, their optimal use of your skills and experience. The result is that your work becomes more meaningful and more effective. You're not just building a resume, you're building a legacy. The clarity about what you don't want. Experience teaches you what you don't want as clearly as it teaches you what you do want. By 53, I know exactly what kinds of activities drain my energy, what types of people I can't work with effectively, what situations bring out the worst in me, and what goals don't actually motivate me when things get difficult. This negative knowledge is incredibly valuable. I know I don't want to spend time in meetings that could be emails. I know I don't want to work with people who are more interested in politics than progress. I know I don't want to pursue opportunities that require me to be someone I'm not. I know I don't want to waste energy on problems that will solve themselves. I know I don't want to build things that don't make the world better. This clarity about what to avoid creates more focus than just knowing what you want. It's easier to eliminate bad options than to identify perfect options. When a new opportunity arises, I don't just ask whether it's good, I ask whether it involves anything I know I want to avoid. If it does, the answer is no, regardless of how attractive other aspects might be. This negative screening saves enormous amounts of time and energy that would otherwise be spent on experiences I already know won't work for me. The power of selective engagement. One of the most important skills you develop after 50 is the ability to engage selectively rather than constantly. In your 30s and 40s, you feel like you need to be available to everyone, interested in everything, responsive to all opportunity. This creates a life of constant reaction rather than intentional action. By 50, you realize that selective engagement isn't selfish, it's strategic. You can't contribute your best work if you're spreading your attention across everything that demands it. For me, this means selective availability. I'm fully present for the commitments I make, but I make fewer commitments overall. Selective learning. I focus deeply on acquiring knowledge that compounds over time rather than staying current with every new development. Selective networking. I invest in deepening existing valuable relationships rather than constantly meeting new people. Selective communication. I respond thoroughly to important messages and ignore or delegate everything else. Selective problem solving. I focus on problems that only I can solve and delegate or ignore problems that others can handle. This selectivity isn't about becoming isolated or arrogant. It's about maximizing the impact of your limited time and energy by focusing on areas where you can create the most value. The long-term perspective advantage. One counterintuitive advantage of age is that having less time remaining actually improves your long-term thinking. When you're young, long-term feels abstract. Someday feels infinitely distant. It's easy to make decisions based on short-term considerations, because you assume you'll have plenty of time to course correct later. When you're 53, you understand viscerally that long-term isn't that long. The decisions you make today will shape the rest of your life because you don't have time for multiple complete do-overs. This creates a different kind of strategic thinking. You focus on building things that will outlast you rather than just things that benefit you immediately. You prioritize sustainable approaches over approaches that create short-term gains but long-term problems. You invest in capabilities that compound rather than capabilities that provide immediate returns. You build relationships based on mutual value creation rather than transactional benefit. You make decisions based on their 10-year implications rather than their 10-month implications. This long-term focus combined with the urgency that comes from understanding time's finite nature creates a unique strategic advantage. You think like someone planning for decades, but act like someone who knows every day counts. How to maximize every day after 50. Here's the framework I use to ensure that every day matters. Morning clarity. Every morning I ask myself, what's the one thing I could accomplish today that would make the biggest difference 10 years from now? This focuses my energy on activities with compound benefits rather than just urgent tasks. Energy allocation. I've mapped my energy patterns and protect my peak hours ruthlessly. My best thinking happens between 8:00 a.m. and 2:00 p.m., so that's when I work on the most important problems. Everything else gets scheduled around these peak periods. Decision speed. I've developed frameworks for making different types of decisions quickly. Reversible decisions made in hours or days with minimal analysis. Irreversible decisions get deeper analysis, but still concluded within weeks. Delegation. Decisions. Anything someone else can do, 80% as well gets delegated immediately. Relationship investment. I invest deeply in a small number of high-value relationships rather than maintaining a large network of casual connections. Quality over quantity becomes more important with age. Learning focus. I only pursue learning that either applies directly to my current mission, builds foundational knowledge that compounds over time, satisfies genuine curiosity about how the world works. Legacy building. Every major decision gets evaluated through the lens of, will I be proud of this choice when I'm looking back on my life? This ensures alignment between daily actions and long-term values. The urgency of now. Here's what I want you to understand. If you're 50 or approaching 50, this isn't the time to slow down. It's the time to speed up intelligently. You have capabilities now that you've never had before. Pattern recognition from decades of experience, decision making, confidence from surviving failures and success, clarity about what matters from understanding what doesn't, freedom from others' expectations because you know who you are, urgency about time because you understand it's finite. The combination of these advantages creates the potential for your most impactful. At Tesla, our biggest breakthroughs have happened in the last 5 years. At SpaceX, we've achieved more in the last 3 years than in the previous 15 combined. This isn't despite my age. It's because of the focus, experience, and urgency that come with it. Your 50s and 60s aren't your declining years. They're your leverage years. Years when everything you've learned, everyone you've met, and every capability you've developed can combine to create outsized impact, but only if you approach them with intention, urgency, and clarity about what matters most. The days matter more after 50 because you finally know how to make them count. Don't waste that advantage. Your next chapter starts now. Every day after 50 is a gift, but it's not a passive gift. It's a gift that requires you to act, to choose, to prioritize, to focus. The question isn't whether you have enough days left to make a meaningful impact. The question is whether you're brave enough to make the most of the days you have. Your experience is an asset. Your urgency is fuel. Your clarity is a competitive advantage. Combined, they give you everything you need to make your next chapter your best chapter. The world needs what you've learned. It needs the perspective that only comes from decades of experience. It needs the solutions that only someone with your background can provide. Don't let anyone tell you that your best years are behind you. Don't believe that 50 means slowing down or playing it safe. Every day matters more after 50 because you finally have the wisdom to make each day count. Use that wisdom. Time is running out for all of us. But that's exactly why right now is the most important moment of your life. Subscribe to this channel if this changed how you think about aging and impact. Share it with someone who needs to hear that their best years might still be ahead of them. And remember, the goal isn't to have more days. The goal is to make the days you have matter more. At 53, I'm just getting started. So are you?